Good afternoon, campers. It is Andy here with another edition of Ask Andy Anything, and I mean anything. All right. Now, hopefully, it's going to be, real estate business, marketing, mental health related stuff. But so far, we've had 3 episodes, I think, so far, and we've already had some interesting questions that are hopefully getting us all to learn something new. Gang, I hope you're all going well. It is the 13th of July. It is 12:30. And the reason why we put this show together is quite simply so that we can all feel a little bit more connected, have a little bit more fun, and live life with a degree of simplicity. That's what I love about my world, gang. It's incredibly simple, and I like to keep it that way. So if I can help you guys kick on and inspire some action in you guys as well, then we're all going to be winners. All right. So thanks ever so much for tuning in over the course of the last few days. And this is going to be a show that will be on every single day during the Victorian lockdown. So 7 days a week, right the way through the Victorian lockdown, just so that people can feel that degree of connection, humanization of what has been a very inhumane almost kind of world, right? So that's why I put this show together. It's got nothing to do with anything that I'm doing necessarily. It just means that hopefully you guys can feel like you're not the only ones out there. I know that a number of people are really kicking goals, which is amazing to see, but I'm already getting a few messages from a few people that are really struggling energy-wise. So thank you so much for everybody that's contributed so far. Emily, thank you so much. I miss hugs, sending you all a virtual one. Emily, one day we will get to embrace once again. I'm absolutely certain of that. Now, gang, a couple of questions that have come through. One from my good friend Chris Melbourne, who's one of my fellow auctioneers, but he's also a really great guy. Gone through a hell of a lot of stuff himself, being the proud father of young Jasper over the last few weeks with the incredible Mel. And he wanted to ask me a question about what I've seen so far in 2020 and what I've learned about it almost from my own perspective. And as well as that, I want to tackle the whole topic of motivation. Tim Romerall posted a comment yesterday about struggling to get motivated. And it's an interesting thing, motivation, because it can very much be something that is positive, but it also can be addictive, and you can become reliant upon the need for motivation to move you forward. So external motivation anyway, those happy clappy videos and so on and so forth. We really don't want to be getting addicted to those bad boys, because otherwise you'll be watching them for a good few hours and then waste the whole load of productivity out of your day. So, first things first, my friends, we are going to crack on with the first question, which is from Chris. Biggest takeaways from 2020 so far. Now, it's been an interesting little ride for everybody, but for myself, it's had a few extra curveballs than normal, I have to say. A bunch of you know about this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this down into professional and personal, okay, which will effectively work out to be logistics in technicals and mechanical stuff, and then a little bit of emotional stuff as well, and hopefully some of it helps some of you guys through what you're going on with right now. Now, from a professional point of view, I reckon one of the biggest wins I've had from a professional point of view is coming across the book called The One Thing by Gary Keller. Now, Gary Keller is the founder of Keller Williams, which is the biggest real estate firm in the US. But he's also an incredible guy from everything that I've read and understood and learned from him. Charlotte Pascoe, she put me onto this book called The One Thing. And it was an incredible book about, it's not about real estate, by the way, guys. He's actually about, really honing in on the one thing that you're good at, that you can really push forward with, and therefore make sure that you do the one thing that you can do in every facet of whatever it is that you're trying to achieve, from a wealth creation point of view, from a social connection point of view, anything like that. incredibly easy to consume book, gang. So I would highly recommend that you either download and listen or grab a copy and read, because it goes through all sorts of different stuff. But that for me was fantastic read, because one thing I've learned about what I've been doing up to this point is I've become quite competent at a whole load of stuff. And I reckon this is where a lot of you guys will probably empathize with me here. When you're a business owner, or you're a director, or you're a salesperson who is obviously running their own business within the business, or if you are a PM that has got a portfolio to manage and so on, what have you, you've got to become quite competent at a whole load of different things, whether it's financial, marketing, communication, logistics. You have to get a grip of a whole load of different stuff. The big trap that I fell into as a business owner, though, was that I started doing so much of the stuff that I'm competent at that I didn't give myself enough time to really excel in what it is that I really enjoy doing, what gets me in that zone of genius, or the flow state type scenarios that we'll try and achieve with our roles. And I was just getting way too heavy into the stuff that made things happen and allowed me to just keep moving forward. Now, one thing that COVID has certainly done is it slowed down the whole game for all of us. And this is where it gave me that degree of breathing space to be able to really assess what I've been spending so much of my time on, how far away from myself I had become from a professional point of view, and what I need to do to get back to that point, which it's been an absolute godsend to me, because without that, I wouldn't have been able to really sort of become a lot more centered in myself in terms of who I am and how I'm portraying that as a professional. And we'll talk about values and being a professional human in a second. But it also allowed me to really ascertain where I'm spending my money, where I should be spending money, because we're all becoming a lot more frugal, right? But where I can gain the most amount of value out of both my money, but also my time. And that is really critical, gang. So critical. I mean, obviously it's Monday. My wife's got work to do as well. We've got the two kids at home, a 5-year-old and almost a 2-year-old. They need entertaining and feeding and looking after and so on and so forth. And it's really quite difficult to try and manage, even with the two of us. So time becomes increasingly critical when it comes to when you are spending your time with what things and what have you. So for me, what I'm doing during this COVID period is I'm trying to be as active in terms of communicating and collaborating with people as I can during the day, and then spending my time on business development and projects and all that sort of stuff at night time after the kids are in bed, so that I can just crack on doing that stuff, even if it's just for a power hour or so. I feel that really does give me that drive to be able to just get as much done in that hour, because I'm having to restrict myself to giving myself a limited amount of time to get productive work done. All right. So the one thing, Gary Keller, big win for 2020 for me. I highly recommend that you read it. It's not just a real estate. It's not got anything to do with real estate, but it's by a guy who is revered in the real estate landscape. Second one for me is getting back to my roots as a professional. And it's one thing that really helped me along in my hospitality game. And it's understanding and acknowledging you are allowed to be professional and human at the same time. Now, one of the reasons why I'm doing this Ask Andy thing is because it's raw, it's real, and I'm hopefully showing a whole bunch of you guys that you are allowed, you have got permission to be a human being as well as being the professional in what it is that you are doing. You have to be. If you get so far away from who you are as a human being, then you will start to really resent yourself as a professional. And the other thing is, you won't be able to broadcast your messages effectively if you don't do it in the most humane way, in the most authentic way you can possibly be. Now, everybody talks about authenticity and what have you, and you've got to be authentic. No, you don't have to be authentic. You can't be authentic. You have to be absolutely aligned with who you are. And the byproduct of that is the authenticity that comes out of you. You can't fake, you can't bullshit authenticity. It either happens or it doesn't. It's not a skill that you can learn. It's a skill that it's a thing that you have to just bring out of you by understanding who it is that you actually are. Now, when I was in hospitality, I was always quite cheeky with everything that I did, but I was always hyper professional, and it was always in the right mentality of making sure that the consumers had a really, really good time in whichever venue I was in. I've come into a sort of more of a suit and boot real estate landscape, and I found myself just separating just ever so slightly from who it is that I am. As a result of that, I started resenting the real estate industry quite significantly, and I did do for quite some time. Auctioneering gave me that glimmer of hope that I can still be who I am and be okay in this industry. But not because of social media, but because of some of the reprobates that are on social media, I started finding myself hiding who I actually am from the masses, from socials and feeds and what have you. I finally broken back through that and got back to that thought, that logic, that ethos that we are all supposed to be professionally human. We are supposed to be humanely professional, whichever way you want to chop it up. Ultimately, if you're going into a listing appointment and the vendor hates your guts, you aren't going to get it. It doesn't matter how much you know about your show, you are not going to get the work because you make their skin crawl. And conversely, and this is where they both go hand in hand. So I'm not talking about being, hippie sort of dancing around a campfire with, incense and crap. What I'm talking about is the fact that you need to be human in the sense that you need to give them, the consumer, an opportunity to genuinely connect with you. But then you've got to be professional, actually know your stuff. It is an EQ plus IQ scenario in order to really give yourself the highest chance of success with the transaction that you're trying to undertake. You have to have both. And that's why I'm going to really bang on about this professional human stuff, because you are, knowing what you know, the IQ component, the professional component is all on you. That is just time and dedication and discipline, understanding and knowing your role, knowing your craft, knowing the game and how it needs to be played in order to achieve the best outcome for vendors, being able to apply your expertise to the vendor's scenario instead of just cookie cutting them into the whole sort of way that you want to get things done or the directive that you've been given. But also you've got to make sure that they think you're okay as a human, that they think that you're an all right guy and that they can relate to you. The minute that you put those barriers right up and you just try and be Captain Professional the whole time, you're going to be screwed. Go too far the other way, you get too humble, and then you'll become everyone's friend that never gets the business. Oh, we really liked you as a friend, but we kind of just felt a little bit more comfortable giving it to this guy or that gal. I'm sure a bunch of you would have heard that, right? And it's because of the fact that you try to be way too human in the transaction without showing the integrity and the professionalism that you're being hired for, okay? You've not ticked the boxes that have given them that comfort that you know your stuff. So it's a fine balance between the two, but you've got to make sure that you have that balance, all right? Really crucial about being a professional human. And the last one, which kind of segues into the human, the personal stuff, are values. Now, values have absolutely been bastardized by businesses, by the corporate landscape. They're being used now as a bit of a measuring stick from which you can discipline your staff, because you'll say, look, we are measuring you against these values, and according to what you said to this person or what you did in that scenario, you didn't stack up against our value X. And it's just become a way of being able to discipline and really sort of whip people into shape. What values are, in essence, are the filters that you absolutely put everything, all information through. Anything that you consume, anything that you see, everything you hear, anything that you smell, taste, touch, they will go through your value filters. And then from there, your value filters will assign a value to that piece of information before giving you the signals as to how you need to feel about whatever it is that's gone on in front of you. Okay. So what I used to do with my values, especially with Soul Buy, was I had 4 values, all right? Transparency, ambition, generosity, and humility. And I sort of thought that they were very much about me. I got them from working through Simon Sinek's Start With Why and really sort of tuned into them for a couple of years. And I thought I was going down the right path. When I was over in England dealing with some personal stuff, I had a good few hours to really ascertain what my life values actually are. And the three values that I came up with, having done a really good exercise with Ben Taylor, who's the CEO of Keller Williams UK, another great guy, really tipped my cap to the way that he goes about life. Came up with 3 completely different ones: fun, connection, simplicity. And that feels so much more genuine, so much more real. And it means that it makes life so much easier for me to be able to interpret information, give it a value, or give it no value if it just has no significance to my life in any way, shape, or form. Having gone through those filters, then I don't get stressed about it. What it did do was help me to remain calm in situations where I could have got stressed, which we're all going through right now, okay? I would highly recommend that you have a look at your values from a personal point of view and then transfer them through to your professional life. Really, really crucial. Massive thing for me in 2020. Now, the biggest personal one for me comes down to internal dialogue and how we talk to ourselves through when we're going through various things and situations and whatnot. So obviously we're all going through COVID, which is rubbish. For those of you that don't know, and I'm completely cool with opening myself up a little bit here. It's the whole point of me doing it. In the start of April, I found out that both my parents were diagnosed with cancer, which wasn't the best week of my life. Now, that's why I got permission to bolt back over to England and go look after them. Unfortunately, my old man passed away. My mum, thankfully, was at the other end of the cancer scale and is, on her back, back to full fitness. She's got some radiation therapy, and then she'll, all being well, be sweet as a nut. But my old man, unfortunately, passed away. And when I was over there, old habits of mine were being very much akin to being very, very detrimental to myself. I probably would have beaten myself up about being so far away, moving so far away from them in the first place and moving from England to Australia. I probably would have beaten myself up about not being there for them, even though I was over here. I could have communicated with them more and really hammering down on everything that been thinking and doing and feeling, right? But what happened was, when people started asking me, right, and this is one thing, when you go through grief, so many people just want to see you cry. I don't know what it is, right, in the human psyche that people ask if you're all right, and you go, yeah, look, I'm all right, I'm not too bad. And they'll go, oh, are you really all right? It's like they're putting you to try and be bad, and it's ridiculous. It's just, I get that people try and hide emotions and stuff like that. I totally understand that. But at the same time, sometimes people are just okay because emotions come and go, right? You're not sad 1,000,000% of the time. The emotions come and go. So you've got to make sure, right, that you accept those emotions and then move past them and through them, having accepted them and own them. Well, for me, what I started to say to people was, look, I'm actually really grateful for the dad that I had as opposed to the guy that I've lost. And when I said that for the first time, the dialogue within my own mind shifted so significantly, and it really hammered home a point to me about how you talk to yourself, how much you talk to yourself, and the way in which you talk to yourself 100% dictates how you go about everything in your life. Okay, so if you talk about struggling to stay motivated, you are going to struggle to be motivated because that's the way that you are communicating to yourself, let alone anybody else. Now, I'm not saying that you bullshit yourself into a false sense of security or anything like that, but I was faced with a pretty epic scenario, a pretty hectic scenario, dealing with my dad who was on his last legs. And my mum was going through surgeries to try and remove lumps and hopefully get it out before it caused any more damage. With my family on the other side of the world, so my wife and my 2 kids were over in Australia, so I couldn't reconnect with the mothership back home in a real sort of physical sense. It was a bloody hard chop, April and May for me. But because I've just constantly talked about gratitude and how grateful I was for the dad that I had, for the guy that he was to me, for the life that he gave, that he worked so damn hard to provide for me, it allowed me to be a lot more at peace with everything that was going on around me. A lot more at peace. I was a lot less combative about things. I wasn't getting angry about anything because, obviously stress can really sort of wrench you when you're upset and whatnot, right? But I just found that my life became a lot more peaceful when I was a lot more at peace with myself and a lot more grateful for everything that I had as opposed to what I was losing. All right, so that was probably the biggest thing for me. Is self-talk is so much more critical than what people get credit for. It is so incredibly critical with everything that you do. So if you find yourself, if you're one of those guys, so I was talking to my physio Tash the other week, and she's very good at saying fear a lot. I fear this, I fear that, and I said, look, try and just switch that. And Rick Rushton, ironically, one of my mentors, mates, guys I look up to, he put a post on this on LinkedIn about this exact same thing. Instead of saying fear, think about anticipation. Instead of victim, think about victor. I think that was Rick's. Example. Instead of worrying about what you're losing, think about gratitude for what you have got and what you could potentially gain. It sounds a little bit airy-fairy, but trust me, that internal dialogue is so insanely powerful. I can't stress enough of it to any of you. So please think about, just be aware, right? Think about some negative words and then try and listen out from when you say it, right? Listen for them when you say them. Just pick up on it, register it, and then have a think about whether you could have said something else to yourself a little bit later down the track. All right, just have a think about that, gang. Hopefully that was some sort of assistance to some of you. Like I said, tough old time in the Reed household, but incredibly grateful for everything that's gone on, and me being able to go back to England. I was just so grateful to just be able to be at my dad's side when he was drawing his last breath and writing his final chapter, right? So much to be grateful for, gang. And that all came down to the way that I was interpreting it in my own head and talking to myself about it. Now, just quickly before we go into struggles with motivation, Blago, I hope you're well, my friend, out there in QLD. Emily's going well. Was Max Holloway robbed? Yes, in a nutshell, in my opinion. Unfortunately, so for those of you that are UFC fans, I genuinely believe that Holloway was robbed. I thought he won that fight. He just put too much firepower down in the early stages for Volsky to get back in the game without a knockout, to be perfectly frank, in my humble opinion. Now, next question. I'm a big sports fan, by the way, guys. If you want to talk sport for a little bit on this, I'm more than happy to. I'm a massive sports fan, but we want to get into the next big question, next big topic. Struggles with motivation. Big one, especially when we're at home and the pantry is calling you and the bickies are there and the ISO belly ain't getting any smaller, right? And we're getting really comfy and really accustomed to wearing those tracky dacks every single day as opposed to just on the weekends, right? It's a big one. And look, it's another part of the reason why I'm doing this, because I want to stay motivated to be able to stay connected with everybody, right? So this is helping me as much as it's helping you. Struggles with motivation. Now, motivation is a really, really, it's a double-edged sword. Okay, so basically, motivation stems from a neurotransmitter called dopamine, right? So dopamine is one of those happy hormones within your brain that just before you're about to potentially have a big win, or just before you're about to face a big loss or defeat, or you're about to become in danger, dopamine kicks in. It kicks in for both positive and negative scenarios. Okay, and this is why it's a bit of a double-edged sword, because dopamine can give you that little bit of a rush, right? It can give you a bit of a rush that that makes you feel like you can take on the world. And you watch those motivational videos on YouTube, and it gives you that sense. It's almost like a false sense of something really good's about to happen, which kicks in a bit of dopamine, that runs between your neurons in your brain and allows you to feel like you can take on the world. Okay. The problem with dopamine is, or the issue with dopamine is that if you have suffered quite significant loss in your life, or you've had quite traumatic events that have kicked in that sort of fight or flight type sense of self, you can unfortunately tag pretty shoddy memories towards the whole chemical reaction. Your memory, you can absolutely assign bad things, bad scenarios, bad memories, bad interactions with that dopamine high. Okay, so if you're not careful, if you just rely on these motivational videos to give you that external hit of dopamine that allows you to move forward in your life, the problem is it's going to be so short-lived, because ultimately your internal reactions are going to bring up some probably average things that have affected your life in some way, shape, or form, and slow you down quite quickly. People generally tend to stay motivated for a very, very short period of time when they've watched one of these videos. It's just a real quick blast. It's like a hit of bloody heroin or something for your mind, right? So we've really got to try and avoid those motivational videos. I've been a victim of it in a massive, massive way, and we've really got to try and avoid them, because if you just rely too much on them, we all need them from the odd occasion. But if you rely too much on them, then you're going to be forever requiring external stimulants in order to give you that dopamine hit that will allow you to kick on and do your job and whatnot. So really try and avoid those motivational videos as best as you can. Now, the other thing about dopamine is the fact that you can sort of do some stuff that will give you an opportunity to give you little rushes of dopamine that allow you to keep moving forward in everything that you are doing. And it kind of ties in with some of my mental health work that I've been doing with myself and with one or two other people. So every day we go through a whole bunch of wins, right? We have a whole bunch of successes in our life. We might not realize it. We might take a hell of a lot of them for granted, if not the majority. But there are a bunch of things that give us even a minute bit of dopamine that allows us to move forward with the next part of whatever it is that we're doing. So, for example, getting dressed, for example, putting on a really good pair of socks, right? Or, as I've said in a talk that hopefully, fingers crossed, I might be presenting to a greater audience soon. If you put on a really good pair of underpants, it makes you feel good. It gives you the fact that you are about to put on a really good pair of socks. It gives you that initial dopamine rush that you are going to feel comforted by those socks. You have so many of those little scenarios that go through your day that give you that little bit of energy to go on and do the next thing, even if it's just going and putting your shirt on, right? If it's cold, you're looking forward to putting your shirt on because you can sense, you can feel like you're about to get warmed by the shirt. That gives you that little bit of dopamine to just make sure that it sees you through with the task of putting on your shirt. That is all stuff that is to do with the dopamine reactions that go on in your brain. Okay, now dopamine there's a whole load of different canals that dopamine can go to, and that's where it can go to positive places, go to negative places. It can lead to greater procrastination if you're not careful. But there are some physical things that you can do that you can set into your day very, very easily that will allow you to just continue on a little bit more. Be that little bit of a rush that you can kick on still. Now I'm just going to go to a little list I wrote down here. So the first one is a pretty easy one, which is your to-do list. Now, most people do a to-do list and feel daunted by it. But again, going back to values, you can assign that value as a negative emotion or as a level of anticipation that you're about to succeed in completing that to-do list, and hence getting that sense of appreciation, a sense of achievement that you've done something with your day. Setting down a little to-do list is really quite important with what's going on right now. Okay, it's important generally to have some sort of achievement list that you're going to get through. Not just because it gives you a chance, a ticking a box makes you feel good, right? It gives you that rush that you've just achieved something, but also it allows you to have a look at that to-do list and actually assess where it aligns with your values and your one thing that you're really good at. Because if you don't align with that, maybe you want to be outsourcing some of that to-do stuff to someone else so that you can focus on your really, really core tasks. Okay, so that's a little byproduct of doing a to-do list. But if you couple it with a miniature deadline, so Steve Carroll, when we were doing the Silver Lining series, he talked about time blocking. With each time block, giving yourself one or two of those key tasks in order for you to that you need to achieve within that 45 minutes or an hour, or however long you can sustain your attention span for. For me, it's half an hour to 45 minutes tops, pretty much, before my mind starts drifting onto other things. So if you can have a bit of a to-do list and then assign time blocks to tackle each particular elements of your to-do list, there will be a dopamine rush. There will be a reliance on you to make sure you assign that dopamine to a positive memory. You assign that dopamine rush to a positive connotation, the anticipation you're about to move forward with your business, with your life, whatever the case may be. Really critical, that bit. But then when you achieve it, live in that sense of achievement for a moment or two. Allow yourself to feel good. It's pretty good, that feeling of achievement, right? So that's really good for you. Now, in terms of your diet, there are some key things in your diet that can be helped with dopamine. One of them is fruit, raw fruit, not canned, not processed, not cooked, raw fruit. So having an apple, having a banana, having something like that is very, very important in order for you to just maintain that level of dopamine. So it gives you that motivation within yourself to keep pushing forward, okay? Another great one, I know that exercise is an obvious no-brainer, but give yourself, even if it's just 15 minutes or so, give yourself 15 to 20 minutes just to go out and walk up and down the street. Just do something that takes you away from your workstation. Just do something like that. Ideally whilst eating a banana or something, a piece of fruit. You'll feel that sense of, you'll be refocused, reorganized within your own mind, and it'll allow you to push on with your next time block. Make sure you time block a bit of fresh air within your day. Incredibly important. And make sure when you're about to tackle each time block, this is quite critical, when you're about to tackle each time block, don't think about the start, how much you've got to do. Focus for even half a minute on what's going to happen at the end of the time block, having achieved, having completed those things that you set out to complete. Don't think about the start of the time block. Think about the outcome at the end. Start with the end in mind. It's one of the really, really critical pieces of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And this is why. This is exactly why. If you start with the end in mind, your dopamine will kick in and go to a positive place that will allow you to motivate yourself in order to get those jobs done. That's why starting with the end in mind is in that book, because it creates a chemical reaction within your mind that gives you the drive to succeed with whatever task it is. All right. So hopefully that helped you out. Hopefully that helped you out a little bit, because it's a really critical point. It's a really critical point. Now, another one that ties in with oxytocin. So oxytocin is another one of those happy hormones that is created. It kicks into gear whenever you get a sense of social connection, social security. Basically, when you've done something nice for someone, that really cool feeling that you get, it's oxytocin that's giving you that sense, okay, that feeling. Dopamine and oxytocin can combine together if you do one of two things. And this is really crucial for teamwork. Allow your team members, if you are a leader, to share successes as they have them, especially if you're working remotely. Allow them to broadcast on a WhatsApp chain or something along those lines Just something quick and easy whenever they've achieved something cool. Not only will that give them a little bit of a sense of achievement, it will also make you feel good for them by saying, congratulations, that's awesome, great job, well done. That will give you a bit of an oxytocin kick to move on with whatever it is that you're doing that day. It will absolutely do that. If you can combine oxytocin and dopamine by showing a degree of gratitude or a degree of happiness towards one of your colleagues, one of your counterparts that have done really, really well, it can inspire you to move forward. And then when it does that, it hits that cycle of dopamine, which means that you get that internal motivation to really kick on and try and achieve something for yourself. Hopefully that makes sense. I think it did. If it didn't, please send me a DM. I'll send you links. In fact, I will send you a really cool link to an article that really explains in much greater detail. I'll put that in the comment section below, so you can have a bit of a watch of it. I have studied part of my mental health journey. My trip down mental health lane is understanding all these happy hormones. So, oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, which creates melatonin, and the endorphin rush. Okay, so endorphin rush is when it's actually to help you. It masks pain. It tries to help mask physical pain. So I've studied a bit of that. And when it comes to this, when it comes to motivation, you need to understand the internal mechanics so you can internally motivate yourself and not have to rely on external factors to get you to that place. It's critical. All right, guys. And then look, you're really struggling and you're watching all of it and it's still not happening, then you've got to look at what it is that you're actually doing in the first place and wondering if it's going to flip the switches for too much longer. There is things that we have to do. Of course, there's stuff that we have to do that we don't want to do, like go to the accountants and whatnot. None of us really want to go there and talk, tax and stuff. It's rubbish, but it's a necessary evil. But that's why you got to think about what the end of the objective, what is the end goal of the objective? To go to the accountants, to get the tax sorted, to keep the tax one off my back so I can rock and roll with the rest of my year. Wonderful. That is a good thing. That's why I'm going to go to the accountant and get it done. Simple as that, gang. All right. I think I've talked enough. I think you guys have been awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, tuning in. I really, really appreciate it. Once again, I will be here. Same time, same place, same Facebook page, same LinkedIn page, 12:30 Australian Eastern Standard Time tomorrow. If you got any questions, please feel free to send me a DM or comment below on this. I will tackle it tomorrow. And if you want to come on the show, or if you have someone that you think is going to be really good value on this show, please let me know. I will do my best to get them on for you. All right, guys, you take care. We'll see you tomorrow.